Welcome back to the City Current Show. I'm your host, Jeremy Park. We're always honored to bring you inspiring stories of individuals and organizations making a difference, empowering the good. And we're going to be talking about adoption. We're joined by Dietz Osborne. He's the president and CEO of Miriam's Promise. How are you doing?
I'm good, Jeremy. Thanks for asking. How are you today?
Doing very well. So you all do a tremendous amount of good working with mothers, youth, families, making sure that families are successful on a lot of fronts. But let's start out. Give us a little bit of history for Miriam's Promise.
Sure. We were founded in 1985 as a satellite office of the Holston Home for Children in Greenville, Tennessee. We were sort of in and out of their auspices until 2002. And then in 2003, we became our own separate 501c3. We are affiliated with the Tennessee Western Kentucky Conference of the United Methodist Church. However, we are not governed nor fully funded by the local churches. And so we, in about the late 1990s, we went from being called Tennessee Conference Children's Services to Miriam's Promise. And Miriam is, of course, Moses' sister in the Bible. And when Moses' mother put him in the basket in the Nile, and she left Miriam there to watch over him. And then when the Egyptian princess drew him up out of the water, Miriam had the courage to step forward and say, "Can I get a Hebrew woman to nurse the baby for you?" And in that instant, Miriam became the advocate for her little brother, the adoptive mother, and the birth family. And that's what we're called to do, is be the advocate for all three members of the adoption triad, and then help facilitate all those in the adoption constellation thereafter.
Yeah, and I'm glad you painted that picture and that illustration, because it shows obviously the context, but also it leads us into what you all do. So when you talk about everything you do, I mean, you kind of set the stage, but dive in a little bit deeper into these nuances, because you work on all fronts.
We do. We offer wraparound services. We offer non-directive option-based pregnancy counseling free of charge to those young people who find themselves in the midst of an unplanned pregnancy. And our and I'll talk a little bit more about that in a second. We also offer child counseling and parenting coaching, and then adoption-related services as far as home studies, and we do international work, we do domestic work, we do court reporting, we do adoptive supervision. So we sort of run the whole gamut of the adoption timeline.
Let's talk about where it starts. So when you talk about mothers finding you, where does that start?
So if a young person finds themselves in the midst of an unplanned pregnancy, they can reach out to us, and we're kind of different. First of all, it is free of charge to the client, but what we want to do is make sure that they have a safe space to make decisions, whether they're going to parent that child or whether they're going to make an adoption plan. And pretty regularly, probably 8 out of 10 of our expectant parent clients come to us, and they're suffering from a poverty, not necessarily a poverty of wealth or money, but a poverty of love, where they don't necessarily have a support system in place, whether with a given family or a chosen family. There might have been some drug exposure. They might be experiencing homelessness. They might already be parenting other children. And so when they first come to us, the first thing we do is assess their physical needs that need to be met, because we know that if your physical needs aren't being met, there's no way that your brain can make decisions, high-level decisions like, am I going to parent this child, or am I going to make an adoption plan? And so that's what we take care of first, is making sure that their physical needs are being met. And then beyond then, we talk about decision counseling and, pros and cons of what does parenting look like, and what are the pros of parenting? What are the cons of parenting? What are the pros of making an adoption plan? What are the cons of making an adoption plan? And we really walk through that whole process with them. And then we make sure that they understand that from the initial call, even after placement, if they decide to place their child for adoption, that we're there. We're there to support them in any way that we can, both physically, mentally, and emotionally.
You mentioned on the adoption side, domestic, national, even international. What does that look like between the differences?
So we have three different adoption-related programs. The first of all is our domestic infant program. And what that means is a prospective adopted family will come to us. They'll go through our training. We'll write their home study. And then once their home study is approved, we'll place them on our Hopeful Families waiting list. And that's the list of folks that we show to potential to clients that are going to potentially make an adoption plan, because we want that pregnant person to make sure that they get to choose if they want to. They don't have to, but and so that there's a relationship that's built there, because we know that child is going to be suffering a break in attachment, and the more they know about their family of origin, the better for the adoptive family and the better for the child as they grow older. Our next program is our independent program, and that's generally where a family already has a child identified and they need a home study and supervision because of Tennessee state law. And that's more like your typical private adoption, right? And then our international services, we're called what's called a provider agency. We're accredited. We're Hague accredited by the International or Intercountry Adoption Accrediting Entity, or IAME for short. And that means that we participate in the best practices of international adoption. So we don't actually have a program in other countries, although we have the capacity to do so, or the accreditation to do so. But what we do is we do the training for families that are looking to adopt internationally. We write their home study, and we work with a partner agency that does have a placing program in another country. And so those are the three adoption-related services that we offer.
When you talk about a family looking to adopt, you mentioned the home study, a lot of training, making sure that they're equipped on their side. What are a few things that you wish every family knew on the front end in terms of kind of walking in through the process? What are some recommendations, some tips, some things that they need to know for parents who are looking to adopt?
Sure. So not always, but a lot of times folks come to us because they've suffered from infertility. And so we want to make sure that they have dealt with that in an emotional and a mental way, because that can be, it can be very scarring. And really anybody that walks into our doors or gives us a call is starting from a place of vulnerability. And we never take that for granted, and we want to meet people where they are. And so when folks come to us looking, to grow their family through adoption, we want to make sure that they're mentally ready to do that. And so, we walk through some counseling, we do some intensive interviewing to make sure. But things that, I want folks to look out for is a lot of our training has to do with trust-based relational intervention, because we know that attachments are broken in relationship, and so they can only be fixed in relationship. And even though a child or an infant may go home directly from the hospital to their forever home, that's still a break in attachment, right? And that's going to cause some trauma. And so we try to train folks on the front end on techniques and coaching methods so that they're ready and they're prepared once their child starts growing older. So that's one thing that we let people know at the beginning. We also, adoption has the reputation sometimes of being very, very expensive, and sometimes it can be. But in our domestic infant program, our services are based on a sliding scale based on income. And so we have a minimum and we have a maximum, but we want to make sure that it's inclusive as possible. And all of those services are provided as you go. So at the beginning, we lay out our fee statement, we get your income, and we figure out what your total is going to be. And then you pay for that as your services come along. So you go through the group training, and that's subtracted from that last total. You get your home study written, and that's subtracted. So it's not a lot each time you're doing it. It is, it's sort of like you have a whole grocery cart, and we're taking things out as we go.
Well, and it's transparency too, which is
Yeah.
a big piece of this. So on your end, when you look at success and what that looks like, what does that look like? How are you grading success? Kind of, what does success look like for you all?
Well, a lot of different ways. First of all, when an expectant parent, comes to us and we sat with her, for 6 to 8 months or however long, success to us is her feeling confident enough to make a decision, whether she wants to make an adoption plan or if she wants to parent that child, and then being able to express out loud how we can support them once either of those things happen, right? In our child counseling program, we have talk therapy, we have play therapy, again, based on techniques from TBRI or trust-based relational intervention. And so, when a kiddo comes in and they're having rage issues because of some trauma that has happened, they've come from a hard place, maybe an orphanage across the world or a chaotic birth experience. And success looks like the parent and the child working together to ensure that that trauma is being healed as much as it possibly can be, and we have specific outcomes that we grade, to make sure that those things are happening. And then in our adoption related program, success looks like when we place a child in a family's arms that has been longing to be a parent for so long, or when a family travels to another country and is able to bring their child home. All of that looks like success. And then, in post-placement operations, when we do supervision that is either required by the state or the sending country, we're making sure that those healthy attachments are being made, that we are working on those, and everything comes from a place of trauma-informed care, so that, we can have the most healthy families possible.
You all are putting out a ton of helpful resources. You're doing webinars. I'm thinking there's one coming up on Adoption Laws 101. And so understanding the laws. Talk about the educational component and the outreach side.
Yeah, so what we do is we try to offer webinars monthly. The one coming up is about adoption law in Tennessee. And it's especially helpful because the adoption industry is not federally regulated, so each of the 50 states has their own laws. None of them are the same, because, that would be too helpful. So instead, each state has their own. And so that webinar coming up in September will be sort of walking through what the legalities are of adoption in Tennessee. In the past, we've done search and reunion, where, adopted kiddos may be wanting to search for their origin of family and what that looks like for them, but also preparing the adoptive parents mentally and emotionally for that journey and how they can be supportive to their kiddos that are wanting to search. And then we've also offered other topics like transracial adoption, taking a deep dive into that, and how you, as perhaps a Caucasian parent, if you're parenting a biracial child, or an African-American child, what that means, what that looks like, because when you bring that baby home from the hospital, things look different than when they're 13 and maybe, pulled over on their bicycle in your all Caucasian neighborhood, and the trauma that's gonna, incur, and how, as parents, you can be prepared for that, to support your children emotionally. So different things like that. We talk about, for those that have been waiting for a while or just starting the adoption process, that's especially hard at Christmas because it's one more holiday that, you don't have a kiddo under the tree to open presents. And so we talk about the emotional toll that can take, and that'll be coming up in December. So some super interesting topics that reach all manner of folks in the adoption constellation.
How can the community help your efforts?
Well, we have two fundraising events a year. First, we do a dinner and silent and live auction in the spring called Celebrate the Promise. And in the fall, we have a golf and walk challenge named after one of our founding board members, Mary Cooper. That's actually on September 23rd this year. at Old Fork Golf and Walkway in Murfreesboro, Tennessee. But also we need board members. We need folks that have a heart for what we do. Sometimes we need not only to participate in the events, but also in the planning of the events. Either on the committee leading up to it, or physical manual labor on the day of to get things set up, run smoothly, and then taken down at the end of the day.
So wrap up with where we can go to learn more about Miriam's Promise.
All right. To learn more about us, you can go to miriamspromise.org. You can find us on Twitter, LinkedIn, Instagram, and Facebook. Yeah. And you can go to our website. You can sign up for our monthly newsletter, and you get information every month about what's going on, including any events that are coming up and webinars that we'll be holding, and different information like that.
The website again is miriamspromise.org. So miriamspromise.org. Dietz, thank you for all you and your amazing team do. Thank you for coming on the show.
Thanks for having me. I really, really appreciate it.